So this is not how I imagined I would do the 150th episode of the podcast. This was supposed to be a big celebration and extravaganza, as they say, but the reality is it is lined up with my renovations. And so I'm just not equipped to do something super in-depth, man. We are entering the painting phase, and it's just taking up a lot of my time and bandwidth and energy. And while some of you have really been enjoying our retro episodes, our renovation replays, I just got the sense, man, that some of you wanted something new, wanted to reconnect, and to be perfectly honest, I wanted that too. You do these renovations and you're just kind of step out of your real life for a while, and it's been cool for me. It's been good for me to be able to focus on some of that stuff. But you know, I kind of want to reconnect too, kids, and so while I do not have time in the midst of all of this to prepare a more focused episode or a more topical episode of relevance to the 150th, why throw a pretense on this anyways? What I'm going to do is a relatively quick, I hope, Q&A episode, answer some of the questions you've got about the podcast and this milestone, about some really cool existential stuff and some spiritual stuff and some personal development stuff, all rolled up and boiled into this 150th episode of the John Huff Podcast. I'm even gonna do a stupid human trick, and that alone is worth hanging around, kids. So sit down, grab yourself a mint julep, get yourself a can of paint to put your feet up on, and we'll get to it all on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. I hope this sounds okay. I am not in my little studio because it remains gutted. It remains gutted, and I remain gutted that I have not been able to deliver upon you new episodes recently, but I'm doing the best I can, man. So what we're going to do right now is a good old-fashioned Q&A. I really enjoy the Q&A episodes. I like them because they can go pretty much anywhere, man. And I enjoy variety. You know, some people really enjoy podcasts that are super duper focused, that are super duper topical. And I have tried at times to do that too. I have tried at times to focus the podcast because it feels like that's the only chance it has of being successful. But the reality is I think this show wants to be more general, all right? I think this show wants to go to interesting places, and I hope you, the listening public, want to go to those places too. But I got a bunch of really, I think, fun and in some cases poignant questions. I'm going to answer as many of them as I can in a short time because I do not have a lot of time to do this, and I do not have a lot of time to edit this. I got 3 gigs this weekend with 3 different acts. I'm prepping for that. I'm rehearsing. We're getting painting going. There's just a lot of balls in the air, kids. A lot of balls in the air, and I am not a great juggler. First question comes to us from our old friend Ken the Zen, the mighty Ken the Zen, a frequent guest on this program, on my Road-a-Sode episodes, and a great supporter of the program, Ken the Zen. On this occasion of the 150th real episode, I do so appreciate your support of the program. And he offers us a timely and relevant question, which is, after 149 episodes, what is the biggest gift or the biggest thing that the podcast has given to you? And this is my moment to reflect on the past 4 years and 149 episodes of this freaking thing. And you know, what I'm tempted to say is the biggest gift that the podcast has given me is the connections that I've made to people out there. I mean, I have had the chance, especially in the more guest-focused episodes, to sit down with Jason Tate, one of my favorite drummers, for an hour. You know, the podcast is a key. The podcast opens doors to things, man. And I think about having spent some time via Zoom with J-Bo Billman of Grinder Blues. That's incredible to me. And the 2 episodes I've done with freaking Jackie Neville. You know, I consider Jackie, we had contact pre-podcast, all right? I was a fan of her band, The Balconies. We have talked at shows. You know, we have exchanged a few messages trying to hook up an interview for my music blog back in the day. But it was these 2 episodes recording with Jackie where I really got to know her better. And I can say, honestly, that Jackie Neville is a friend of mine now. And that is a direct product of this podcast, man. And it's just a delight to me to have been able to spend time with her and with so many others and to consider her now a friend of mine. And the same goes for Emily Dolan Davies. Emily, from a few episodes back, we had what I think was just a really great and inspiring and vulnerable conversation. And it's conversations like those that produce friendships. And now Emily and I message back and forth off air. You know, I consider Emily Dolan Davies a friend of mine, and I am delighted by that. Not because Emily is a world-class drummer and a famous drummer, and she does all this cool stuff, and I can look around and say, hey, look it, I got a celebrity buddy. It's not that. It's Emily as a person. It's Emily as a human being. You know, this energy she has, this wisdom she has, this willingness, this openness to share her gifts with the world and her knowledge with the world. Emily Dolan Davies is just a superhuman being. And it's great to me, and I feel really, really privileged to consider her a friend now. And this is the product of making this podcast. You know, this is just some of the stuff that you look at and say, what great benefit this has brought to my life. The chance to meet my heroes, the chance to make friends of just really, really special and creative and powerful people. I don't mean powerful in the sense of like industry powerful. I just mean as individuals, as personalities, really powerful people. You know, you are, they say, the product or the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. So I say to you kids, surround yourself with good and powerful and aspiring and ambitious and gentle and supportive people. And now, I am not best friends with Jackie Neville or Emily Dolan Davies, but I consider them friends of mine. And they are great influences on me, and I hope I am a positive influence on them to the extent that I influence them. And the podcast has produced that for me. And I look at that as a huge benefit of doing this program. But Ken the Zen, you know, the number one, I would say, benefit of the show, there are other minor ones, like I've been able to push a lot of music out there. I've been able to hopefully support bands, artists that are out there that maybe are trying to grow their audience. I've talked about a lot of them on this show. I've tipped people off to new music. I think karmically that's just a good thing to do. So I've been a conduit for some of those things to enter people's lives, which is great. I know, as an independent podcaster, as a member of independent bands, it's just a delight when some stranger talks about what you're doing publicly. So I know that there are bands and artists out there that have been really pleased and encouraged to hear me talking about their music. You know, I've received messages to that effect. And it's great that this platform allows me to do that and to promote and support and encourage the art that other people are producing. I love it so much when somebody just mentions to me that they listen to my show. Here's a chance for me on my show to mention that I'm listening to other people, which is great. That feels really good. But the number one thing this podcast has given me, Ken the Zen, right from the get-go, and the reason I started it in the first place, is that it has given me something to own. I've been over this in the past. I've talked at length about why this podcast exists, why it started, which is, as a hired musician, I own nothing. I play with a lot of different acts, and it's not my music. It is not my music. It is not my project. I am brought in and hired to be part of it. I value that. I give my very best to every one of those opportunities, but they are not mine. And as a hired player, you depend on other people to hire you. And so, a few years back, as a touring player, as an aspiring touring player, life is great when you've got tours. You live this great, accelerated, really novel and exciting existence. Even if you're not playing Wembley Stadium, just being on the road, being in Europe, playing music, whatever, to me, that is still exotic. That is still exciting to me. And so you live this heightened, accelerated existence. I'm living the dream, man. I'm actually doing it. I'm on the road playing music. And then you come home from that and you crash out. That sense of living the dream is gone because you're just at home cleaning the cat litter box again. And if you don't have stuff lined up, it's very easy to fall into the come down that happens after a tour. And within a couple of weeks, you're like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to make a living? This practical part of it comes in, and depression can follow. And if you do not have something to occupy your time and energy with, then if you're like me, you'll just sit there and stew in it. And I was coming off the road and having deep depressions set in because you're so close to the dream, you're experiencing it, and then it's gone. And then you're left with this silence again. And I needed something I could own. I needed something to occupy my time and energy and to give me a creative outlet and to give me something to focus on that didn't depend on other people and from which I could not be fired or excluded or simply dropped because the artist is doing X, Y, and Z, or not playing anymore, or moved away, or wants new players. Like, this is the turbulence that accompanies being a hired gun, all right? You own nothing, and you can be dropped or lose your gig at the drop of a hat, at the drop of a freaking tissue. It's gone and you're out. This is... the positive side of it is you get to tour and you get paid and you're not responsible for anything. The downside of it is you're out. You're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. It is incredibly flimsy, man. It is flimsy, Jack, occupying this position. And so I needed something that was mine, that depended on nobody else, that I could focus on and put my energy into. And that, Ken the Zen, is what the podcast has given me most fundamentally. A sense of ownership and an antidote to the depression that as well as I do can follow the come down from being on the road. I got a question from Wesley S. Wes S., long-time listener, right from the very beginning. Listener and supporter of the program. First time write-in from our old friend to be, Wes S. He says, hey man, what have you learned from the renovations? So I have not said a lot about the renovations. What's fundamentally happening is that one floor of my home, which includes my office, my little studio, what we're doing is new walls, new floor, okay? This house was built in the 70s. It included on that level some lovely wood paneling. Very, very hip in 1979, less so now. And it was beginning to buckle and fall apart. And from the moment we moved in here, nigh on 20 years ago, one of the things in the back of my brain has been, I want to replace the wood paneling with drywall. I want to update that. And it took me this long to get to it. But we reached a point where when we moved in, we installed a lovely Berber carpet on the floor in those spaces. Lovely. We painted out the paneling to at least freshen up the color. It was like this dark wood. We stained it white. Very, very good. But the paneling is beginning to fall apart. And the floors, the carpet had been catted on for 20 freaking years. It was gross with a capital G and 2 capital S's, all right. So the game is rip out the wood paneling, rip out the carpet, replace both. All right, that's what we're into right now. So it is not a super invasive renovation. There's an issue with the floor that needs to be fixed, all right. But it's not like we're doing a kitchen and they ripped out our whole life. And it's not like we took everything down to the studs and are redoing it. It's a fairly simple renovation procedurally, but it's a time consumer, and my house is upside down and it will be for the foreseeable future, all right? But the question from Wes S is, what have you learned? And knowing what I know about Wes S, he means not what have you learned about using a hammer, but what have you learned existentially? What are the life lessons you're pulling from this reno? And I have a couple. Wes S, because I spend my time thinking about life stuff. You know what I mean? I got two fundamental lessons that I have pulled, lessons about life from this renovation. All right, number one is how good it feels to let go. Phase one of this operation was getting rid of stuff. I cannot abide clutter, all right? As above, so below, as within, as without. Clutter on the outside equals clutter on the inside, all right? Stuff, physical stuff, has weight, okay? It has existential weight. I get really agitated if the place is a mess. I get really agitated if I can't freaking move because there's so much crap everywhere, which creates a problem right now because all of the furniture from those 2 rooms, my TV room, my office, that whole level of my home has been moved to other levels. So those other levels are correspondingly cluttered, and that has been a bit of a challenge for me mentally, all right? Simply finding space to maneuver. But it'll be great when we put it all back together because we did a purge at the start of this reno, man. We rented a bin, one of those big freaking dumpsters, and we're like, we're going to put torn out building materials in there, and all of the rest of the space will be dedicated to getting rid of the crap we have accumulated in 20 years of being here. And then that accumulation includes the previous 30 freaking years of our lives, man. My wife and I, we just brought stuff here, we stuck it on shelves, and there it remains. And so we've set about an aggressive purge of our stuff. And we threw away so many freaking things. Now I am approaching 50. My 50th birthday is coming on the fall. That is a milestone. And I have had, as I've talked about before on the show, an impending sense of change. And sometimes the change cannot happen until the space is made. And so this was both a physical and an existential purge of a past life. Past lives, if you like. And so we're throwing out, I don't know how many 100 pictures. I don't know how many 100. Some of you younger listeners won't understand this concept, but pictures didn't used to be on your phone, all right? Pictures used to be something you took with a camera. And then you took your film in to the camera shop, and they developed it for you, and you got the pictures back not really knowing if they were any good or not. And then half of them had a thumb. Or they're blurry. There was none of this, take a burst shot of 50 and pick a good one. There was none of this shoot a movie and then take a still from it. Physical photos. And if you're of a certain age, you've got boxes full of them, man. And you've got doubles. You got 2 of the photo in case somebody wanted one, Nobody did, but you always got doubles. So we're going through hundreds of photos. Photos from our wedding, photos from whatever, and we threw them out, man. Like my personal photo collection is down to like 7 photos. Now I got 5,000 on my phone, but 7 photos from my life. We purged it all. Junk, garbage, memories. I went through, I found a bunch of stuff from my fiction writing days, kept my manuscripts, but books full of notes and ideas and thoughts and passages and fits and starts. And I threw them all out, man. There was a temptation to me. I'm not nearly as sentimental as I used to be. One of the reasons I have all this stuff is because I've been so sentimental in the past and so attached. But part of my curriculum, especially since COVID, has been about non-attachment. And that can be attachment to physical things. That can be attachment to physical things as symbols, attachments to past lives, attachments to who I used to be, where we used to be, what we used to do, what we used to get into, all of that stuff, And purging these things has been an enormous existential wave. I'm not sentimental anymore. And by the end of this process, it was ruthless. Like, I can't wait to throw out more stuff. Think of how free and clear it's going to be around here when we're done. Think of how free and clear I'll be inside as a result. And so a great lesson of this renovation has been to purge. If you are agitated, if you're feeling a weight around you, clear your space, man. Throw out stuff. It was fun to look at some of these memories. It was fun to put them away. It was fun to let them go. It was like I am ending chapters of my life and getting ready to begin anew. The synchronicity is pretty beautiful, actually. It comes with being 50 years old. Letting go of the old, ushering in the new. If I write again, all that old stuff is gone. It is blank slate time. And I love a freaking blank slate, man. So purge. All right. The first lesson is let go of stuff. Release it. Release the clutter in your world to release the clutter in your mind, man. Not to get too freaking trippy. That's been the first big lesson. Felt amazing to get rid of all this stuff. Amazing. Second lesson is, I don't know how to articulate this in a pithy sentence, but it's to do with approaching projects in terms of phases. When I think about this renovation, even though it's not particularly invasive, when I think about it as a whole project, it's overwhelming. All right, point A to point the end, when it's all done, there are so many steps along the way, and there have been times throughout when I felt myself becoming overwhelmed by what needs to happen here in order for this project to be finished. And one of the things I've learned is how important it is to simply focus on the next step. All right? So we're not talking about new walls, new floors. We're talking about, let's take off the paneling today. We're talking about, let's prime the walls on this day. Whatever the next step is. I've had to break this project down into phases, And so instead of looking at the whole and being overwhelmed, I'm just looking at the next phase. This is the phase that we're in. All right, then you break that down into sections. All right, what are the steps in this phase of the project? We've begun painting, all right? We painted out the ceiling. Okay, that's one step in the painting process. The next thing is we're going to prime the walls. All right, that's the next step in the painting process. Then we're going to actually paint the walls. That's the next step in the painting process. And then the painting process is done. All right, that phase is over. And then we're on to, all right, the floor phase. What has to happen here? So this is my way of handling it, because there have been moments when the drywall went up and the whole 2 rooms of the house, the whole level of the house is a disaster of nails and screws and chunks of drywall, whatever, bindings, and dust. It's just an enormous mess. And I found myself in the middle of that mess thinking, I can't deal with this. I can't do this. I cannot survive this process, because I'm looking at an enormous cleanup just in that moment, but so many things are broken now. So many things are apart now that were once together. How do we put this all back together again? I can't do it. And I became overwhelmed and agitated at one moment. And then I had to pull myself back and remember this lesson. Deal with what's in front of you right now. And what was in front of me at that moment was, got to clean this up again. Once I did that, it felt a lot better. It's like, okay, that's today. Tomorrow, what's the step? And then eventually you focus on these steps and you repeat them, or you knock them off one by one as they come up. And then eventually you'll surface and the last step will be done. The trim will be installed and painted. It'll be done. The whole thing will be finished. And so it is with any project. As a novelist, it was the same freaking thing. You cannot think about the whole. You cannot think about 320 pages that have to be filled. You think about today's page. You're writing an album. It's just, I'm working on this song today. You accumulate the songs and then you get there. You're recording an album. Okay. This is an overwhelming process. Well, no, it isn't, because today we're doing bed tracks on these songs. All right, I'm going to get 4 songs recorded on drums today, and that's it. And then we'll do the rest of the songs, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, just step after step after step. If you are painting, if you are producing a piece of sculpture, if you are doing a degree, you sit there and you think, I got 4 years and X number of credits I have to do. How am I going to do that? You're not. You're going to work on this semester. And then you're going to break that down to, okay, my essay is due here. This much reading is required today. And if you can micro-focus, if you can keep your focus just in front of your eyes and not get overwhelmed by the big picture and just knock off the steps and celebrate your wins and have a feeling of accomplishment from getting there, seeing things progressing, then eventually it will be done, and that saves you the overwhelm. And that's been an enormous help to stop and just learn again about phases, about chunking, about taking things in little pieces. So purge, kids, purge your stuff. And if you are approaching a process or a project, break it down to chunks and just focus on the next freaking step in the process. All right. That's what I've learned, Wes S. So far from this renovation. We're only like midway here. I've also learned to just let professionals do it. On a practical level, I'm not handy and I don't care to be handy. I don't want to learn how to do the floor. I don't want to learn how to do the drywall. Don't care, not interested. Don't enjoy tools, all right? So if you can, just freaking pay people to do it well. Do it fast, do it right. That's another lesson I've learned. Less existential, that's more of a practical thing. Purge, clear space. Man, clear space for whatever comes next. That has been so exciting to me. And learn how to chunk big projects and just focus on what's in front of you and do not get overwhelmed by all the big picture stuff. All right. Thank you, Wes S., for that very important question. Got a couple of good ones from our old pal Jay. Jay, again, from the very beginning, long-time supporter of the program. Thank you so much, Jay, as always, for being an encourager and a supporter of the show. I appreciate so much all of you people who have done that. This has been quite a labor, to be perfectly honest. It's been quite a labor, and mentally it's been tough at times to maintain the show, to push on with the show, and it felt like nobody cared and nobody was listening. But the reality is, even when I say that, nobody listens to my podcast. The truth is, some people do. Jay is one of them. Ken the Zen is one of them. Tash, Elena, all you guys and girls, and however you identify. Thanks so much for supporting this far. It gets me through in ways you don't even know. Like when I get a message from somebody that says, hey, I'm listening. Hey, I enjoyed that episode. Hey, that was good. It warms my cockles, man. It makes such a big difference. This is my encouragement to you. As I'm standing here, not in my little studio, hoping that this sounds okay. My encouragement to you is to encourage other people. If there's a band you like, if there's particularly an indie artist, man, an indie artist or a podcaster or people who are doing something out there at a not huge level, it's not very articulate, indie people in particular, drop them a line and let them know. You have no idea, or maybe you do, what a difference it makes to somebody who doesn't get all of the attention that, say, Taylor Swift does. To hear somebody say, I like your art and I'm paying attention to it and keep going, that can fuel you for 6 freaking months, man. Make a point of it. Do it today. Message somebody whose work you enjoy and just tell them that you do. It makes an enormous freaking difference, man. I get messages like that from Jay, Ken the Zen, from others, and I am so appreciative. And Jay asked, among a number of questions, he asked, what would you like most to be remembered for? And that's an interesting one. We're getting into this legacy thing, and it's kind of profound as we reach 50, Certain things are on the horizon now. They're coming into view later in life, What do you want to be remembered for? And the truth is, I don't have a great answer to that question. When I was a younger man, a kid really, I was really caught up in wanting to be somebody special. I have my own insecurities. I have my own inadequacies. There's stuff that comes out of my younger days that made me want to be notable and special. And, there's a time in my life I'd probably want to be remembered as somebody really important, And time and age and a certain amount of wisdom and no little ego breakdown have indeed broken that down. So what do I want to be remembered for at the end of my life? I don't really have a thing. If anything, I would just like to be remembered fondly. That's it. I would like to be remembered fondly by anybody who remembers me, if anybody does. But I'm so less caught up in some of that ego stuff than I used to be. And I know that's not a very satisfying answer to the freaking question. I think legacy is important, but I think this notion of wanting to be remembered for anything, wanting to be remembered at all, I'm becoming less and less and less wrapped up in some of that ego stuff. It's not entirely gone. I'm still a human being after all. I still feel my ego get tugged on once in a while, and it's part of my curriculum. It's part of me being the best that I can be. I would just like to be remembered fondly if I'm remembered at all. And I'm less and less. And like back in the day, you'd be thinking about who's going to be at your funeral and what do I want my funeral to be like and who do I want to be there and would I like to be a fly on the wall? And now I'm like, I don't care if there's a funeral. What do I freaking care, man? If anybody's around who gives a crap that I'm gone, raise a glass, have a concert, have a show, and just enjoy some good music. Drink a glass of wine, raise a toast if you like. But I don't need to be remembered for anything in particular. Just fondly, if that's possible. That's a lame answer to a very good question. Maybe other people have better answers to that than I do. But I am beginning, I was about to say, to transcend the corporeal. It's just about as pretentious a thing as a cat can say. But I'm way less wrapped up in that. I'm way less wrapped up in being notable in absentia. I'm way less wrapped up in being notable in present life. And this is part of my curriculum about not sacrificing, but getting rid of so much of this ego stuff. I'm not all the way there. It remains a struggle at times, but I'm trying to be less interested in how notable I am, which for me ties into how I'm remembered. So the best I can hope for is to be remembered fondly, if at all. And speaking of remembering, before I forget, I'm going to do the Patreon plug. I barely do a Patreon plug anymore. It's been a while. Folks, lads and lasses, there is a Patreon page for this site. I talk about sending out a message that encourages and supports particularly indie artists. This podcast is, one of my attempts at having a career. In the interest of full disclosure, I interviewed twice for a regular job recently that would have been pretty helpful to me. To be honest, would have been helpful to me mentally, would have been helpful to me financially. I did not get said job. There is a certain amount of discouragement that goes along with that. And I would like to turn the podcast into a job. Patreon is a way to do that. I don't want to fill this space with ads. But if you're getting something from the show, edification, inspiration, education, learning about new music, just like having a friendly voice in your ear, you can support it. You can support me via Patreon, and it's cheap to do so. $5 a month is my membership tier. That's it. Think of it, as I always say, of buying me a cup of coffee, a $1.25 tip for every. I don't like doing the Patreon plug. Is that clear? Is that evident? I don't like to seem to be asking you for your money. But if you value the work that I put into this show, and it is a ton of work, and if you value the artistic aspiration, if you value somebody who's trying to be the evidence that it's possible to do what you want to do with your life, please consider supporting on Patreon, patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. That's patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. The rule of advertising is you've got to put the name 3 times in the ad, right? So you'll hear this in ads all the time. Call 1-800-999-2527. That's 1-800-929. That's like a psychological thing. That's repeating the number so it sticks in your brain. Patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. That's patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. Don't want to do that? That's okay. Can't do that? That's okay. I get it, man. Want to support in other ways? You can share the episodes. Follow me on the socials. Share them around. Tell your friends, kids. If you got friends who like podcasts, if you got friends who like a single voice, if you got friends who might be edified by what we're doing here, please share the episodes with them. Please tell them about it. I do appreciate it. Ratings and reviews. It's been a while. Been a while since I had a rating or review on Apple. So go there this week, kids. Drop me a rating and review, and maybe, I'll just read it out on the next episode. You can buy merch, john-huff.com/shop. I got cool t-shirts. I have got coffee mugs, which are also very, very freaking cool. This is a way to support. It's like Bandcamp. Don't stream the band's songs on Spotify for, you get 1.5 million streams and it's like $6. Go to Bandcamp, download the material, pay the artist $10. It goes right into their pocket. So it is with my merch up to a point. I get a little profit on each merch purchase. john-huff.com/shop. I would very much appreciate that. I'm going to stop plugging now. Going to move on to the episode. That's patreon.com/John Huff Podcast and john-huff.com/shop. And thank you so much for listening. Either way, whether you buy merch, whether you support on Patreon or not, whether you tell a living soul, I thank you, gentle listener, for being here now. Got a great question from Nick Ross. The great Nick Ross, guitar player extraordinaire, guy I have played with on shows before. Really great dude. And I'll put in a plug right now. Nick is about to launch a podcast of his own, and the first episode has not dropped yet. I can tell you that I'm a guest on one of the episodes that's coming up, and I had a really great chat with Nick about some heavy stuff, man. And I love these conversations. I love these conversations about the deep and meaningful stuff. And that is an answer before one of Nick's questions, where Nick says, what are you most grateful for right now? And I've been noodling this over, all right? I have a gratitude practice. I attempt a gratitude practice every day, which is very, very simple, which is simply to acknowledge 3 things every day for which you are grateful. And that can be something so freaking simple. I'm grateful for this really good cup of coffee that I'm having right now. Not everybody has a really good cup of coffee or can access one, but I have one, and it's great. I'm really grateful for strawberries. I like strawberries. And corn season is here. I'm really grateful for corn on the cob. It can be something as simple as that, to just acknowledge the good things in your life. It's very easy to focus on 3 things that I'm pissed off about right now. That's super easy, man. But what does that get you except a volatile soup that you're living in? I have tried to adopt a gratitude practice. Very simple. Wake up in the morning, acknowledge 3 things for which I had a good sleep last night. I'm grateful for that. I got a soft bed. I'm grateful for that. And it can go way beyond that. I beat cancer. I'm grateful for that. It can be as small or as huge as you like. The universe doesn't care, man. The universe just appreciates your gratitude. And I think having an attitude of gratitude brings a lot of good stuff into your life. And so Nick says to me, what are you most grateful for right now? And I think in answer to that question, it is, as I said, the conversations that I'm having with people. Had a gig out of town last weekend with Ken the Zen. We drove together, and we always get into these deep conversations about psychology and spirituality and where are we vulnerable, where are we improving, what are we aspiring to. Inspiring conversations about art and music and life and the stuff that you're working on. Like, I really enjoy these conversations, which is why I enjoyed so much the episode that I recorded with Nick for his new show. And, I'll tell you when that's available. And the episode I did with Emily Dolan Davies recently, where we got into some vulnerable and some heavy stuff, man. I enjoy the spiritual conversations. I enjoy talking about the deep stuff. I enjoy being goofy too. Do not get me wrong. But right now I'm having some really profound conversations with some really wise and learned and open people. And that's just so edifying for me. So what comes to mind, Nick, is that I'm just really grateful for the people who are around me. It's very important. It's instructive to pay attention to the people who are coming in and out of your life. It's important to notice who you interact with on a day-to-day basis. There was a point in time, especially during the depths of my COVID anxiety, when I was having that ego breakdown and I was feeling like just an awful human being, and I was feeling like an abandoned human being. And it was a really, really rough time in my life. And I went to the grocery store, which is kind of a trigger point. It was for me a trigger point at the time. You'd line up outside and then go in your mask, and it's like a biohazard is happening, which I suppose it was. And I still have flashbacks to that, One of my gratitudes every week is when I go to the grocery store and it's just normal again. And I think back to how it was. And then there's just a flood of gratitude for the fact that the pandemic has fundamentally ended, And I think about that a lot. And it throws me back to a time in my life which was really, really difficult, but really, really necessary as well. And so at one point I was at the grocery store and it's tense in there. I'd seen people arguing with each other. It's just like it was a volatile place to be. And God bless the frontline workers who were forced to be there throughout that, doing their freaking jobs, Man, they don't get enough respect. So I'm putting it on them right now. So I'm going around the corner in the grocery store with my cart. And as I'm going around, I sort of almost run into this little woman, this little older woman, And instead of her growling at me or scowling at me, in the tension that was the world at that time, she just smiled at me. She just smiled at me and I smiled at her. And we had this moment of humanity, And it's important, the people that come into your existence are a reflection in many cases of where you're at. Energy-wise, I know this is esoteric, I know this is a bit weird, but the people who are in my life right now, the people I'm interacting with, the people who are coming into my sphere, who are spending time there, are just really wonderful people. I think of my pickleball group, my social group, the acts that I'm playing music with, they're just really good and lovely people, and the conversations I'm having with some of them are profound, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm being able to express a lot, and I'm grateful for that. I am grateful for the folks in my life and the conversations I'm having with them, all right? I hope that answers that question for you, Nick. I'm looking forward to your podcast, man. I will be tipping everybody off to it because, based on our conversation that has not been released yet. There's going to be a ton of inspiration and wisdom in that show. So everybody look for it. I will tell you when it's released. Nick had another question, and I'm probably going to end on this. And there are other questions that came in. Some of them we'll keep. We'll do another Q&A episode at some point. And a lot of those are not time sensitive. They will keep for the next round. But there was another question from Nick that I think is really fun to end on. Great questions from Nick just sent in to me. Now imagine what the questions he asks on his podcast are going to be like, man. Nick says, what is something that you wish more people knew about you? This ties into the legacy question kind of with Jay. What do you want to be remembered for? Well, not much really. What do you wish more people knew about you? And the easy answer to that question is, I wish more people knew I had a podcast. People in my life know that. If, 100,000 other people knew that, that might be helpful. At the risk of sounding greedy. It'd be nice if more people knew I had a podcast, and I'm trying my best to let people know that in a not obnoxious way. But the truth is, I don't think there's anything else. I don't think there's anything that I wish more people knew about me. I occupy this weird position where I have a mostly solo podcast that I am trying to promote publicly while at the same time trying to be less and less and less visible. This is the legacy of my ego breakdown during COVID. It's like I do not want to be as visible as I've been. I do not want to care what people know about me. I do not want to need people to know things about me. I do not want to be, I don't want things to be about me. More accurately, I do not want to need things to be about me. There's a subtle difference there. There's a point in my life when I was a little more fragile, I was a little more egoic, I was a little less secure, a little more insecure, where my validation and my value came from other people acknowledging me. Part of my ego breakdown has been to release that, to release my attachment to other people's attention, So I sit back and I think, what do I wish people knew about me? Nothing. And to be fair, I've been pretty open on this show. So the people who know me, and in my private conversations, I'm pretty open too, man. There's not a lot that I haven't talked about on here that is about me. You know what I mean? There isn't a whole lot that people don't already know. And there certainly isn't really anything that I wish more people knew. I hope that's not disappointing. If it is, I have the antidote. I have a little bone to throw for you. Because the reality is, while I may not need you to know this, you may not want to know this, and when you do, you'll never unknow it. But Nick, I have a stupid human trick. Remember Stupid Human Tricks? That was a David Letterman thing. Dave Letterman used to have a segment called Stupid Human Tricks where he would have people come on from all over the world and just do some goofy thing that they do that it seems like nobody else can do. And it was Stupid Human Tricks, and it was exactly what it sounds like. Have a guy on who could armpit fart the Star-Spangled Banner, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Just goofy, stupid human tricks. And you may not want to know this, and I don't need you to know it, but I have one, okay? And my stupid human trick is that I can say the alphabet backwards without reading it. Yep, there it is, kids. I can say the alphabet backwards without reading it. And I will perform this stupid human trick for you now as a bone, as a way of giving back here on the 150th real episode of the program. Now, we are going to have to operate under the confines of the honor system. You cannot see me. This is not a visual podcast, at least not yet. Who knows what the future holds? You're going to have to trust me when I tell you that I'm about to say the alphabet backwards without reading it, and I promise you, Scout's honor, that I'm not cheating. And if there's enough skepticism, maybe I'll do a video and put it on the Patreon. But for now, take me at my word. I am not reading the alphabet backwards when I say ZYXWVUTSRQPONMLKJIHGFEDCBA. Insert wild crowd applause here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I can say the alphabet backwards. That is my stupid human trick. I'm going to wrap this episode. I had no intention of being here this long. I got work to do. I got to edit this thing and get it out, and I got to rehearsal, and I got to paint, and then I got to gig, and I got to... It's good to be busy. Man, there was a period of years where musicians were not. So I do not take for granted that I am busy now. Thank you, each and every one, for 150 episodes of the John Huff Podcast. If nobody listens, there's no point doing it, man. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your ideas. Thank you for your Patreon membership. Thank you for your merch purchases. Thank you for sharing the episodes. Thanks for giving a crap at all. I appreciate it. I hope you're well. You know, the original intent of this show was to prove that good things happen when you put yourself out there. I am trying now to be the living proof of that. The show is the evidence. Good things do happen when you put yourself out there. Push through the fear, man. Push through the freaking fear and try the thing. And you have my full support and encouragement for that. I am going to sign out. I am going to shut up, shutting up. I hope to just keep doing new episodes now that I have this little setup. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how my time goes. Hopefully we'll do that. If not, there's a couple other Reno replays I can do that I think are really, really worth hearing again. We'll get to that. And until then, ladies and gentlemen of the podcast sphere, I'll check you later. Yeah.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light